Coming up, a union strikes out at sports. We've got the latest.
Find out why this officer was brought before the courts.
And how close is the Bahamas to fulfilling a Millennium Development Goal? The National Report starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Every Day.
Attempts to extend the Bahamas Union of Teachers work to rule to after-school sports programs has reportedly failed. Good evening, everyone. I'm Candino Knowles.
And good evening, Bahamas. I'm Altaviz Munnings. Today, despite best efforts by the union to suspend after-school sports programs, the season kicked off at the D.W. Davis Gymnasium. But despite those efforts, the feat was not an easy one. Late yesterday, a special meeting by the Government Secondary Schools Sports Association Secretary was called to take a vote, removing President Kevin Johnson and other executives from office for reportedly meeting with the Education Minister and agreeing to open the sports season and not participate in the work to rule. But as we hear from Clint Watson tonight, that move may have jumped the gun.
An order was issued Thursday for principals to replace any teacher or coach that does not report to their post in the Ministry of Education's after-school programs. Education Minister Jerome Fitzgerald says those who chose not to fulfill the additional duties they're being paid a stipend for will be replaced by suitable candidates who have undergone the proper vetting process.
I've invited them, however, to consider using teachers who are already in the public school system, who have already been vetted, as the first option. But at the end of the day, the discretion remains squarely with the principals and the Principals Association.
Now, as to whether principals have had to replace anyone, well, President of the New Providence Association of Public High Schools Principals, T. Nicola McKay, was pleased to provide this response.
Not thus far. We are waiting to see what is going to occur, but as I said, I've spoken to all of my principals, and as far as I know, all of us are getting our persons ready. There may be one or two coaches who would have indicated that they are not going to play, but that is not going to stop the show because we have other persons in our schools who can pitch in to do that.
So far, 15 of the 16 schools have committed to participating. As to that meeting called Wednesday night by an executive of Government Secondary School Sports Association, well, it appears that meeting reportedly carried no weight. Principal McKay confirmed that her organization is the governing authority of the GSSA.
That meeting would not have been sanctioned by the GSSA nor the New Providence Principals Association. If she chooses to call a meeting on her own, that's fine, but she cannot do it in the name of the GSSA. If there is a problem with the coaches, they can resort to appealing to the Principals Association with matters pertaining to GSSA, and if nothing is solved, then we turn it over to the Director of Education, Mr. Lionel Sands.
McKay made it clear that no coach can speak on behalf of a school as these institutions pay dues to the GSSA. Minister Fitzgerald is disturbed that the Bahamas Union of Teachers, in his view, is unsuccessfully using the children as pawns for what he calls a misdirected cause.
They are focused, and the devil is a liar.
The BUT initially said that this was a fight they intended on winning. What they didn't expect, though, was that there would be difference of opinions within the union. The season begins today. That's something the union didn't bargain for. Clint Watson, ZNS Network News.
Well, former police constable 44-year-old Jarrett Stubbs made his first appearance in the South Street Magistrate Court today, accused of killing his wife and attempting to kill his son.
In court, Stubbs was charged with the murder of his wife, 39-year-old Alfreda Stubbs, a former pharmacy manager for AML Foods. He was also charged with the attempted murder of his 16-year-old son. The mother and son were stabbed inside their Linden Pilling Estates home back on November 15th, reportedly during a domestic dispute. Stubbs was later taken to the Sandilands Rehabilitation Center for a psychological evaluation after the incident. Now in court today, Stubbs was not required to enter a plea. A voluntary bill of indictment is expected to be filed. Following his arraignment, Stubbs' lawyer requested that he be sent to Sandilands for his personal safety, but the court did not agree and remanded him to prison instead.
However, the court indicated that efforts will be made to keep Stubbs safe in prison. The case has been adjourned to November 26th. And still on news from the courts, convicted murderer Stephen Dye Stubbs was back in court today, this time to appeal his conviction and sentence in a 2009 drug matter. You may recall that Stubbs was sentenced to 4 years in prison last year for conspiring to import 3,995 pounds of marijuana into the country. He was also fined $50,000. Stubbs' co-conspirator Dion Morris was sentenced to 5 years in prison. During today's proceedings, the hearing was adjourned to February as the court didn't have the complete transcripts of the case. Stubbs' attorney, Muriel DeSeal, also informed the court that he has a medical condition and needs to be on a special diet, which he's reportedly being denied in prison. But the court said it wasn't prepared to get involved in the day-to-day management of the prison and advised DeSeal to bring some action in the Supreme Court or present the case to the superintendent of prisons, which DeSeal said he's already done. A verdict expected tomorrow in the incest case of a 59-year-old grandfather. The defendant is accused of molesting his 12-year-old granddaughter on January 15th and 16th of 2011. The child testified earlier that the abuse began when she was just 6 years old and continued for 6 years while she lived in his home. She also told jurors in an emotional testimony that she felt like committing suicide until she heard about a police hotline, which she called and reported the abuse. Now, both sides completed closing submissions today, and Justice Bernard Turner will sum up the case and direct jurors on the law tomorrow morning. After that, the defendant's fate will lie in the hands of the jury. Well, the police in New Providence making a drug bust yesterday and arresting 6 people. 2 were women. The ages of the men range from 19 to 33 and the women 38 to 34. The group was arrested for possession of dangerous drugs. According to reports, around 1 p.m., officers from the Southern Division executed a search warrant at a home located on Hospital Lane where they uncovered 7 pounds of marijuana with a street value of $7,000.
In our first look at weather, 9 days now remaining in the tropical cyclone season, and outside of our studios, we have partly cloudy skies with temperatures 79 degrees, relative humidity 58%, winds out of the east-northeast at 6 knots, your barometric pressure 1,018.7 millibars. That translates to 30.08 inches, and it is steady. But stay tuned. Temperatures around the family violence, travel and boating forecast is still to come.
Coming up, highlights of the slew of bills debated in the House.
And how close is the Bahamas to one of the Millennium Development Goals? Find out coming up. You're watching The Bahamas Tonight.
This portion of the news is brought to you by Shell Helix Ultra. Performance you can see.